Welcome to part 3 of Vera Diemoz' story. The Great Depression lasted 10 years and forced many men and women off of the land and onto the rails. It's estimated there were 250,000 men and women riding the rails during the 1930s. In this segment of the story, Vera talks about witnessing that great migration from her farm. There was a lot of young people, young men on the move riding the rails. Did you see people passing through?
Oh, listen, they'd come through, and sometimes they'd get off and come up to the ranch. And it used to scare me because, you never know what they done. It's total stranger. And so one time my son was playing in our back porch, and they knocked on the door, and he said, "Come on in." And I thought, what am I going to do? They're all out in the fields. The men aren't, and just behind. So he said, "Lady," he says, "I just got off at the freight train, and I'm so hungry." I says, "I'll do anything for you. I'll cut some wood. I'll get you some coal. If you just fix me a sandwich." So I went in and I took a loaf of bread and I put butter on it and some, what else was? I had a roast, and I sliced roast out, and I took that whole loaf and I made a sandwich, put it in a bag for him and gave it to him. And he said, "Lady, you're the best lady I have ever asked you for anything." And they treat me, "Well, I thank you for that big pile of wood you cut for me," I said. And he was he was just a young fella, around 26, 27 years old.
I guess there were thousands of them riding the rails.
We could, from our ranch, we could see him. I tell you, sometime on top of those freight cars, there was just like a bunch of flies on those freight cars.
Really? So there were so many of them.
Oh, it was pathetic. Yeah. So this one lady lived down near the railroad track, and she was raising chicken. So they caught a couple of chicken and live chickens, and they took it with them on the train. She said, "Just so they eat it, that's all I care."
So they were chicken rustlers. People were grabbing food.
Anything, just
live,
so they
whatever.
had something to eat. Nobody knows what actually it is to see somebody hungry. It hurts. It really does hurt. Because when I'd see those young people going hungry and nothing to eat, I thought to myself, "Oh, dear God, I hope I never have to go through that."
So when would you come to town and see them on the streets as well?
No, on the streets, you see them walking from one. They go from, like where there were stores, they go from one store to the other. And sometimes they'd give them things, and sometimes they chase them out. Got to be bothered with them.
Were there camps in and around
There wasn't
Silt?
any camps around. They just traveled, and the next freight train came by, they jammed out there.
So there were no there's Hoovervilles in some of these communities. There were no hobo camps around?
No hobo to camp around. They had a lot of them in San Francisco, that I know. There was a lady there, she had this beautiful home, well, it was like a palace. And they used to gather there, and she'd feed them. She just more or less took them under her wing, and she fed them.
So she was a woman of means, and she felt like she should help them in some
Help
way?
those people out, because she says, "I don't want to see anybody go hungry." And she had it so she could afford. But they never did threaten her, and they never harmed her or anything. Anything she wanted done, they done it.
But you were still a little fearful of them coming into the house, right?
I really was, because, here I was 18, and my little boy was he was only 2 years old, and I still had a fear of him.
Yeah. How old were they generally?
Most of them were, sometimes there were some up in their 60s. Oh, yeah. But most of them were young people, maybe most of them around in the 20s and the 30s. Well, a couple times there was two of them. They were about 18.
Were they any certain race, or were they just all mixed?
All mixed. All mixed. Uh-huh.
Did you have hired people on your farm? Or?
Oh, yes. We hired the Dish family from Silt. They done all our work, like working in our beets. And thin the beets out. You had to thin them out, leave one plant I think it was every 80 inches apart, one plant
What nationality were they?
They were Mexicans, but they were a wonderful family. I think she had 16, 17 children, and they had a dance there at the hall, and her husband was stabbed to death. And, she worked, washed clothes for people to raise those children up.
Wow. When was that? What?
Well, that was back in the 30s.
So somebody just killed him.
Yeah.
And
In the dance hall, right there in the dance hall, they stabbed him. They get into a fight,
so how did the community come together to help her? Did she get help?
They did. They came and they helped. They came down. They got the guy. They took him up here to Glenwood, put him in jail. Had a trial. I don't know what they did with them at that time. They had capital punishment at that time. See, so they took him over to Kansas City. So what they did with them, we lost track of them.
She must have had a terrible time, though. She had what? What did you say? 16 kids?
16 kids.
My goodness.
Well, they help each other. It's amazing. And I helped a lot of them. That's about the potatoes that I told you about, the potatoes and all that.
And the chickens at the holidays.
And to this day, some of those kids, they still know me.
When you look back on your life at 101 and you look at those times, what do you take from that?
Yeah, I think there were better times than there are now.
Tell me about that. Why do you think that?
Because I think the people were more closely minded. Families were very close to one another. They sat at the table, had dinners with the children, and talked about things, about life and everything. Things now, the children, their parents are never home when the children come home from school. They never sit at the table and talk. They're too busy with television. They grab a dish and they sit in front of the television. So, no, I don't regret one bit that I lived those years, all of those years gone by. I don't regret any of it.
So you're glad for your life and what it taught you.
Yeah. Because we didn't learn to be, I want this, I want that. I got to have this and I got to have that.
Yeah, it truly is a different time. I mean, from talking to you and to other people.
I do not regret the life that I lived in those days than now.
So do you think it helped make you strong enough to
it really
get to where you are?
And because all the family, they were young when they had. My brother was only 15 years old when he was feeding 60 head of cattle by himself. So, no, we learned to appreciate things, and we learned to appreciate what we had.
That's the end of part 3 of Vera Diemoz' story. A great story well told. In 2012, Vera Diemoz turned 101 years old.